lovely faculty member, Laura Rhyme.
Hi, everybody.
We're so happy to have her here because it's Thank a Dance Teacher Day, and Laura makes dance very accessible. So I'll let her tell you what she teaches.
Okay, well, I teach absolute beginner adult ballet. So my class is designed for people who took class maybe when they were 7, 8, 9, or something like that, or never took ballet at all, always wanted to try it. And so they have a place where they can come in and have someone say, okay, here's first position, and has the patience to do that. And there, I saw as an adult learning myself a lot of people who wanted to learn, so that inspired me to want to offer a class for someone who just wanted to start from the absolute beginning. So that's my specialty.
And it's amazing. It's a Friday class tomorrow, Fridays at 12:15, and you can join us anytime. We have all the links on Zoom Public for the adults. So that is on the heartandmotionstudio.com class schedule page, and you can find Laura's class on Friday. But before teaching, what did your career look like?
Before teaching, I did marketing and public relations in the software world, actually, for a long time. I worked for small companies in San Francisco and in New York. And then I stopped working in the corporate world to stay home and have kids for a while. And then I went and I stopped dancing a little bit when the kids were really young. And then when I went back, I noticed more than once that I would be at the desk at the studio and someone would come in and ask about beginner, and over again they were told, no, we don't have that. And I thought, well, that's not right. Anyone who wants to learn should be able to learn. So that got me interested in teaching. And so I spoke with the director of the school that I was taking class with at the time, and she recommended the ABT training course because that would give me, a baseline, a curriculum, a place to begin. And so that's where I started, and then soon after I finished the course, I started teaching a beginner ballet class over in Ossining in New York.
Wow. So you got into teaching dance by default, seeing a need in the community. That's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
Wow.
when you're in the city and there's a million dance classes to choose from, yes, you can find one. But when you're outside of the city and you're looking at dance studios that are thinking, okay, where can I attract the most students? They aren't necessarily thinking about attracting a beginner. So
That's incredible. My next question is, who are some inspirations for you in the dance world?
um probably the first one would be my dance teacher in college. So one of the reasons I teach adult beginners is because I learned ballet essentially as an adult. I took tap and jazz and that sort of thing all the way through high school. And the dance school that I attended didn't offer ballet. I wanted it so badly, but they didn't offer that. So I really didn't start taking ballet till I was 17, 18 years old. And when I went to college, I was a beginner. And my teacher was completely behind me, and she appreciated that I had the performing experience so I could get on stage and wouldn't stand there like a deer in the headlights. And so she was great, and she taught me how to do basically everything. And I told her I was interested in going on point, and she said that's no problem, and put me in a pre-point class, and then I started that way. And she was wonderful. She actually danced with Finus Young,
Oh, wow.
and in the Harkness Ballet, and she danced with ABT briefly. So she was the real thing. She had danced professionally herself, and she was a wonderful teacher. So she was probably my first inspiration. And then these days, Olivia is my inspiration. She's such a wonderful teacher, and she loves ballet so much, and loves teaching. So for me, that's a big inspiration as well. And then from the performing standpoint, when I was in San Francisco, The King and I was touring, and at that time, Nureyev was starring in that as the King.
Wow.
And so I was going around the different dance studios in San Francisco when I first moved there to watch class and see, like, is this for me? And I just happened to go in there one day and he was taking class. And I was just blown away. Here's this man who was probably by then in his 50s or 60s. He was older, but he was, I mean, his leg was at 45 degrees, but everything he did was gorgeous and thoughtful and musical. And he would adapt the bar on the fly. Right.
Wow.
So if the teacher gave a combination that asked him to do something that his body couldn't do, he would just change it and just fit it in perfectly with the music. Like, so he would do the combination to a point where he needed to change, and then he would jump out and change it a little and then jump back in, and you know what I mean? Like, it was amazing. And just watching him was so inspiring as a dancer, and just, you know, how he could so easily just adapt the piece to his own body and what he needed to do. And he was so gorgeous. It was just,
Thanks for sharing that. It seems like whether you knew it at the time or not, it's almost influenced what your teaching is today, with being able to let anyone adapt. I know a lot of the students in your class, like you said, have zero dance experience, come to you later in life. So what you do is incredible. And saying Olivia is an inspiration, it's funny because Olivia is actually our next interview tomorrow. And I know you've been demonstrating to help her, and Olivia is definitely, we're so proud of her, you know, as our most senior faculty member teaching online. You know, someone her age is fantastic to really see that happening and breaking down all those barriers, which really seem to be the inspiration, because dance is for everyone. And I know that's a big hashtag in the dance community now. So thanks for sharing your personal inspirations. But if you had to pick one piece of knowledge that your students took with them from your classes, what would that be?
I think, from my perspective, I kind of two things, if I can do two. One would be musicality, because I feel like if you can take music and interpret it in any way, then that is dancing. That's what dancing is. It's taking music and turning it into something that you feel inside, that you show to your audience, whether that's, you know, in the classroom or on stage. So musicality is really important to me, and just moving. I mean, most people don't chasse down the street. They don't move through space. So I try to get my students to do a big jump or a really, you know, a traveling combination. So even if something that really moves around, so they can really feel dance, that they're not just learning a step or trying a technique, or, you know, oh, I'm focused on pointing my foot or getting my leg to this position. I mean, that's so dry, and it's not going to inspire anyone to keep up with dance. And that's certainly not why they they picture a ballerina, right? And so I want them to find that little bit of ballerina in themselves that they can then do in the classroom and take with them wherever. So those are the main things that I want them to take away, that I want them to really feel movement, and ideally really with music, so that they feel the dance, that they've done it, that they're not just, you know, robotically, you know, doing the steps, right?
That's beautiful.
That's to me, that's a fitness class or something else. And there's nothing wrong with,
yeah, they're great, but
fitness is great, but it's a different thing. You want someone, they come to a dance class because they want to do something that's a little bit beyond just executing technique or steps.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
The next is, what was the most challenging or difficult moment in your career?
Probably going to the ABT curriculum class. You go to one of these things and you're in a giant studio at ABT, and there's probably 50 people there, and they've all got experience teaching, right? Most of them have been teaching for a long time, but they want the credential of saying, oh, I've been certified as an ABT teacher. Me, I'd never I had never taught a class ever. So I'm walking in there as an adult learner and someone who's never taught class before. And the way those classes are taught is they give you the concepts and then they send you home with your homework, which is put together a combination for an adagio or put together a tendu combination. And you have to go in there with a live pianist. You have to instruct the pianist what kind of music you want, and then you have to demonstrate it for everybody.
Wow.
And then they critique you.
It's a lot of pressure. And I know you've been part of the showings for the Bergen Dance Makers where we meet monthly for the choreography, but when you're in the performer's seat as opposed to the choreographer's hot seat, and that's also with people we're close with and know, so I can imagine that would be very intimidating. So for those watching, if you don't have as much of a dance knowledge or ballet background, ABT is American Ballet Theater, and I didn't know that's where you got your training, so I learned something new about you myself, Laura.
Well, that's the curriculum that I am, most strictly based on. But my training is really from, the gamut of what I've learned. So the 4 years in college, and then in San Francisco, I took dance at Lines Dance Company in San Francisco for a number of years. And then when I moved to the East Coast, I took dance at Perry Dance in New York City for quite a while before I moved up to Rockland. So I've taken from a lot of different teachers, and that's one of the advantages of going to an open adult class is one day I would have this tall woman who was trained in the Netherlands that everything was long and lyrical, and that was her style because she was a tall, thin woman. And then the next day I would have Arturo, who was shorter than I am, and would give you these fast little, very energetic combinations. And so it was great because you take little pieces from all of the teachers that you have and kind of put them together. But the ABT gives you the structure to understand, okay, you don't give a beginner these things, you give them these things. So it gives you the knowledge of where to begin and then how to build so that you don't lose your students on day one and they aren't standing there practically in tears because you've given them something that's just way too difficult, right? So the ABT definitely gives me the structure, but I play around with it. I wouldn't, if someone from ABT walked in, they wouldn't be like, that's textbook, not necessarily.
Yeah. And you've been doing it for so long. Of course, you put your own spin on it.
I try to.
But outside of teaching, what do you do to enjoy in your spare time?
Oh, in my spare time, I'm
I know your mom, it's hard to have that, right?
Yeah, I do. I love reading. I sing in the choir at my church when when that exists. I love gardening, and I have too many cats. I have to take care of them. And just, and then the mom thing, my daughter's a dancer too. So helping to support her and be part of, and sometimes I get to be part of the performances at the dance school, and that's really fun. I get to play like a character role of like the grandmother or some other role like that, which is really fun. So I've done that a few times and gotten roped into Nutcracker somehow doing that too. So those are probably my main things that I love to do.
That's really fun. And it's the best part about these interviews for me, or the people I see every single week, multiple times a week, I'm learning new things about you as well. I knew you had done the dance performance, one of the masses over by us in Bergen County, but I didn't know that you sang in the choir.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful fun fact. I know I was supposed to dance for Easter Mass at my church, and of course, everything is online. So, in light of these challenging times, what ways do you feel dance and the arts can help us during a time like this while we're apart during COVID-19?
Well, I think the main thing is that what a lot of people will tell you is that the arts in particular help people feel human. I mean, it helps you to think about something beyond your next meal and the drudgery of like cleaning your house or things like that. Um, our artistry is something that makes us not just an animal, it makes us a human being. And I think when people can express themselves and lose themselves a little bit in the moment of creating, putting something together and taking it into your head and putting it out there in your body. I know for me, taking Olivia's class it's a lifesaver. It really it takes me away from my day to day, and it reminds me that the things that I really enjoy are still available. So that's that for me. That's what it is, and I'm hoping that my students are getting that as well.
That's
That's what I try
beautiful.
to give them every week.
Well, it is real life because somehow I have a landline that's ringing. What is what is your favorite memory in the performance world? I know I've seen you perform professionally quite a bit as well. So, what's one of your favorite performance memories? I know you mentioned some performances with your daughter's school as well.
Um, I think one of the most memorable was the first time I performed with Art of Motion in your Nutcracker. I did the Chinese dance with that Olivia asked me to come in and do. Maiko had been doing it and she had gotten injured, and so they asked me to come in and do it. So that was the first time I'd performed on point in 20 years or a really long time. So that was a big moment. And then the following year, I got to do it with Maiko again. We did it as a duet, and that was
Beautiful.
really fun. I love dancing with Maiko because she has such wonderful energy. And if you've noticed, if you've seen the pieces that Olivia has done, even though I'm taller and she's shorter and our body types are not similar at all, she almost always pairs us together because I don't know. There's something about the energy of working with her. And we both love to jump and have a lot of energy when we perform. So she tends to put us together as a pair. Like if she's doing 4 different roles, she'll almost always be like, okay, and the duet will be Laura and Mike. So um, that's a big pleasure to dance with her and to be part of those performances. And we've performed with live music a few times. Um, we performed in the opera,
Right.
and we performed with live drums and guitar for Iolanthe. No, not Iolanthe. The
It'll
La
come.
Rota.
La Rosa,
That was
yes.
really interesting. And so, really listening carefully to what the musician is trying to say and putting that into your dance, as well as dancing with everyone else, watching to stay together and, feel what you're doing together. Those definitely make it interesting as well.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing all that. And I know Maiko most recently, I had the pleasure of performing with her for the first time when we did the Susan G. Komen fundraiser
Mhm.
last fall. And that energy really is contagious and it's beautiful. I've seen you perform personally on stage many times. And if let's say there's someone out here who just started in the industry, is there any advice before we finish that you would give someone who just started out as a dancer?
That wants to teach, or just as a wants to perform and dance?
Either one.
Um, I would say as a dancer, when I always was a big believer in go watch class. Don't just walk in and take it and see what happens. Go watch the classes that you think are going to be a fit for you and get a feel for what it's like. Um, and also don't just stick with one teacher and one class. find many different styles and teachers that you can get inspiration from, because everyone has something different to offer.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Something you're interested in, because not everyone wants to do that. As a teacher, I think my advice would be make sure you have a strong knowledge of the curriculum and the basis for what you want to offer, because I think there's a lot of teachers that just throw themselves out there like, well, I'm a dancer, I can teach, but teaching has to be based on some sense of what you want your students to get out of it, and some structure behind it, because otherwise it's just sort of this random giving class, right? And for a more advanced dancer, I think that's fine. But if you really want to teach and give corrections and help people grow as dancers and performers, you need to have the knowledge yourself before you can give it to someone else. So there's definitely a difference between teaching and dancing. And I think a lot of people assume, well, if you're a dancer, then you can teach someone else. But that's not necessarily the case. I'm sure you've taken a class or two from someone who you were like, this is not right.
It has to be based on the progressions and all the things you talked about. I know after you take Olivia's ballet class on Fridays, when we were together in the studio, I'd always see you, you know, having a snack, going over your lessons, getting ready, because you want to recognize what you did in the last class, build on it. Also, you know, repeating as well as introducing new concepts. And I think it's fantastic how you explain your journey as a teacher, you know, how it was dance was a part of your life in so many ways, and you actually found teaching dance later in life, right? Performing, you know, was first. So you were a college dance major, is that correct?
I actually didn't major in dance. I was lucky because at Skidmore, at least at that time, it was really an open dance program. So you didn't have to be a major to be as included as everyone else, as long as you were dedicated and wanted to do the work. So the requirement for the major, one of them was anatomy and physiology, and the big stickler was that the teacher who taught that, there was only one professor who taught that, he hated dance majors. And so made life very miserable for them. And I remember a lot of my fellow dancers were just dreading that class. So I thought, well, if I can take choreography, I can be in the performing group, I can take as much technique class as I want, if I can get all of the benefits and not have to deal with that. So I actually didn't major, but I essentially did almost the exact same thing. I took dance history, I took dance appreciation, but I didn't get the certificate because I chickened out on the anatomy and physiology, which I have taken since. Because I'm actually in the process of becoming a lactation consultant, so I had to have it for that. But
that's really cool. I'm sure we have a lot of moms here who will be future mothers looking for that service. And you know, we're really grateful to have you on our staff and our faculty. Laura, I know you've done so much. And for those of you watching who don't know, Laura was also faculty with Art Emotion, who was in the space we're at in Ridgewood for 17 years and now still continues to dance professionally with the Art Emotion Dance Theater, who are faculty members, Olivia Galgano and Lynn Needle, perform. And I believe we were supposed to be performing next weekend.
We're in the middle of working on a new piece with Olivia, and that had to be suspended. So I'm hoping it's all still cooking up there in her brain, and we'll get to finish it soon when we can get back to the studio, because that was a nice piece that we were putting together.
What was the piece that you were working on?
Oh, I lost your audio.
No worries. I think our time is up. That's probably why.
Oh, I can't hear you.
No worries. We'll wrap up. Thanks, Laura. Bye.
All right, thanks, Nikki. All right, bye-bye.